Welcome to Real Herbalism Radio, show 293, recorded at Big Dog Studios in Eugene, Oregon. Today's show is brought to you by
MudPod Design. Is your site ADA compliant? Do you know if it is? MudPod Design can help you by running a free website accessibility audit. Just go to mudpoddesign.com/free-ADA-audit today. thepracticalherbalist.com. Get info on plants and plant medicine that's supported by science and tradition at thepracticalherbalist.com. We make herbalism practical and easy. thepracticalherbalist.com.
Now here are your hosts.
I'm Candace Hunter.
I'm Patrick Hunter.
And welcome to Real Herbalism Radio. Well, Patrick, happy solstice.
Happy solstice. Happy Yule tide, as it were.
It's hard to believe that we have managed to make it this far.
This year, you mean, or in life?
This year.
You know, last year we had such a different experience with, the full pandemic year, or the full, well, let me phrase that, 9 months of the pandemic year and going through lockdown, going through all the things that we were facing then. It was a very different solstice for us last year. This year, it's been a full year of pandemic and Delta variants and vaccinations and vaccination cards. And it's just been a crazy year for all of that. And it's like, oh.
Yeah. There's been so much change and transformation, and a lot of it unexpected. I've noticed over the last year, a lot of people I had ideas of where I would be now last year, even with pandemic mind frame and recognizing I didn't know when the end would actually happen, when lockdowns would be done and all of that. Even with that, I had an idea of where I'd be, and I'm in a very different place than I thought I would be, because this has been a really strange year.
Yeah, I think for both of us too, we hit that milestone in our life, where we've both turned the big 50, and it's been transitionatory, or at least the feeling is different. It was, kind of, I think we were on our way into work today, and we were talking about how, in the cosmic scheme of things, the Earth runs around the sun, or rotates every day, and it doesn't matter to what it feels like. But we were coming in on an off day, and it was like, there's a really different feeling to a Saturday than there is to a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But cosmically, it's not. It doesn't matter. Mother Nature doesn't care.
Well, that was when you made that comment, I thought about how, here we are at the solstice, shortest day of the year. And yes, Mother Nature doesn't clock it every 7 days, and the rhythms aren't based on this short duration. Mother Nature's rhythms are much longer. But that's that point where the crossing between humanity and how humans behave, and the world we've created for ourselves, and the world that the other plants and animals have, they've created.
Right.
And, they're doing what they do. Douglas fir is still, taking in the sunlight every day. And today happens to be the shortest day of the year, so it's going to be the longest sleep. And, but it's still, it's just this long-term progression. In 6 months, it'll be the longest day of the year. And, things change each day, but they change on such a big scale compared to what we humans, our scale is 7 days. Everything happens in 7 days.
I guess that's what you're saying. I thought you were saying more like, every day there's a change, but it's subtle, and that subtle change builds onto itself to the point where you get, a lot of light in one day and not a lot of dark. And on the other side of that, you get a lot of dark and not a lot of light.
Yeah, that's kind of like, for that Douglas fir tree, this is the first day of 365 days. And then in 365 days, this day will come around again. For us, it is, today, and in 7 days, that day will come around again, because we've so detached ourselves from the actual rhythms of nature that we've got this artificial construct that we live by, and the feeling that happens in the human world, the amount of tension and the amount of busyness and whatever else is different based on whatever day of the week it happens to be.
Oh yeah. And every day seems to have a feel to it. And it's totally of our societal construct. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you go to Mongolia, if they have the same construct of a week that we do. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
Are they like locked into this idea, or are they more, lunar cycle schedule, or the world, like, oh, this is when
Right.
we raise the horses now, and this is when the horses lamb, and we do these other things, and it's all about
Yeah.
a animal structure time frame, then because of their society versus ours, which is very much Monday through Friday has a work week, and this is what we do, and
Right.
very structured.
Yeah. Well, I mean, humans across the globe, as far as I understand, for the most part, have adopted the European style Monday through Friday work week structure with 24-hour time clocks and hours and minutes and seconds and counting, all the time counting.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I'm sure, communities where that's less important.
Right.
And there are places where that might be still non-existent, because I know there are indigenous peoples who live in various areas throughout the world that don't have computers, are not listening to this podcast. I know that exists, but the volume of humanity that adheres to that stuff is much greater. So I just shorthand it and say humanity, all of humanity. We do this.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are doing it based on the 7-day week and all that. But I think that whole idea of the question of where spirit and physical healing intersects is partly caught up in that. Our constructs of days and months and time, which doesn't really match what Mother Nature's experience might be, is, I think that's part of where, when we were talking with Deatra and Adam last week, part of what I was thinking about was that in that space is where the Ashkenazi people did that's how they married it using, biblical sayings and are not biblical, Torah, but
from their book,
writings, writings, Psalms or whatever. I'm using the wrong words here, but they're using the Holy Scriptures and those sorts of things, and they're using sometimes multiple languages coming from other places. Some of them would have been biblical, some of them might have been from the Quran or wherever else. They're just using the holy words because that takes the human part of it, and they're marrying it with the plants and the actual physical and spiritual healing that the plants themselves bring, and they're putting them together in an amulet or in a ritual or whatever, whatever that particular challenge that they're facing has, whatever that malady is. So I feel like I just spoke really vaguely.
Well, but there's no, it's hard to be exact in what you're saying, because there's like you said, there's the physical, which we can touch, smell, see, whatever, and then there's the spiritual, which is this whole higher level of energy and things. And it comes back to what we're talking about today, with that feeling of what a weekday is versus a weekend versus whatever. If there's a feeling to it, you can't describe it other than there's a feeling, there's an energy.
Yeah.
So back to the Ashkenazi, that maybe that's the thing. It's like you can't nail it down and say this is what it is.
Right.
It's more of an energetic feeling. It's more of a just spiritual in that sense, and they have a connection to it and they can draw from it. But if you ask them to describe it as you would a noun, I don't know that they could necessarily do that, because they would come back to, well, it's a feeling, it's a belief, we just know it's there.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just know.
Yeah.
I can't prove it, I just know it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Faith and grace, I think, are two of the words that modern Christian people use to describe exactly that.
Yeah, that is probably the right terminology for that. But then again, if you said, well, define faith, I'm sure you could come up with a Webster's definition for faith, but it really means a lot of different things to a lot of different people on how they perceive what faith is. Right.
That's true. That's true. I think that as we are changing, when the Ashkenazi peoples, when they were doing their healing work, the world of humanity was much more structured and much more narrow, and we had these for lack of a better word, esoteric verses in our holy scriptures. And we had a whole group of people, the rabbis and, for other, priests and other, depending on which religion you're looking at, we had these peoples that interpreted these esoteric words for all the rest of us, And as we've moved through the Enlightenment, which was, as science became a dominant force in our world, and more people, those esoteric works were translated into, out of Latin and Hebrew and all of that into the language that was common to the people of the area. So, in our case, English, King James Bible and all of that.
Right.
And then people started to look at them and analyze it and figure it out for themselves. We've moved into this place where those esoteric structures are no longer the only force that helps us understand the world and understand that place where spirit dwells.
Right.
And now we have this combination of science helping us understand that, the esoteric works, sometimes for some people in the original languages and for some of us in the translations. And then we have talking with each other, and more of us are owning our own understanding of the spiritual realm, even whether we're doing that within the context of being part of a congregation or a community that understands it in a certain way, or whether we're just individuals. There are Christian peoples, for instance, in our area that I've, spoken with who have their understanding, but they have their own individual experiences. There are Jewish people also, same thing. And in our area, regular people I've spoken to, they have their own experiences within the context of, and they use the context and the language of their chosen religion and community to describe their own experiences. But the rigid nature of those structures is loosening. It's becoming a little bit more pliable and flexible. It's still strongly rooted in the old, the old ways,
right,
the past and its, foundations. But we're reaching a point where more and more of us are finding that we can actually figure some of these things out ourselves, have our own experiences and language them ourselves. And I think that's a place now in modern society where we're seeing the herbalists and shamanic type practitioners and the energy workers working where they're having, like I've had an experience with yarrow, and I know the spiritual healing properties of yarrow as well as the physical healing properties of yarrow.
Right.
I understand how yarrow helps you protect your boundaries and keep your emotional body clean. I understand that there is an emotional body, and the emotional body is how I perceive feelings. And this description of an emotional body comes out of, Hindu religion and or not Hindu religion, but Ayurveda and its description of the various energetic bodies. And that matches up with other traditions that have talked about the energy bodies. So yarrow works at that level. And it also helps to draw shrapnel or crud out of the wound in your leg. It's especially good for deep wounds, in part because emotional wounds are deep in nature. That's what they are. So you can see how the plant brings all of those pieces together in just one thing.
Right.
And we now are seeing more and more people are talking about these things. There are more mystics, for lack of a better word, mystical herbalists.
Well, one of the things that we've even noticed on the Practical Herbalist itself is that some of the most popular articles are about the magical properties of the herbs, the different properties of herbs than just good for, it's an adaptogen and it does this and it's good for that, and so it becomes less of a physical tool to fix an ailment,
right,
versus, well, what is the myth and magic of this herb? What's the other yin and yang part of it? So the yin is the the physical, and this is what it does. What's the yang part? What's the other part of it that we don't, we go back to that faith and that idea and that energy? What is that? And that's there. And more people that based on, purely on our website.
Yeah. Right.
More and more people seem to be very interested in that type of information about the herbs.
Yeah. And I think
they all seem to know the base, but they don't know the upper.
And I think there's a growing understanding amongst, all of us of in humanity that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, a physical ailment, whatever it may be, has a spiritual, emotional, psychological component to it. And it isn't just the trauma of, oh, gee, I broke my arm and it really hurts, but there's something deeper there. What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of life, if you will? What is the meaning of this physical problem I've got? Why is this here? Not why is this here just because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but also why was I in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Right.
And we're looking to the plants to help us figure that out, in part because we can see that they seem to know this.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that dandelion grows up between cracks in the cement so easily? Why is it that if there's been if the soil is poor, you're likely to have calendula do really well? And why?
How do you know you're hitting the big time? When you see folks wearing your logo out and about. Ace High Graphics can help you get your logo out there with custom design apparel, like hats and hoodies and tees with custom bags and more. Ace High Graphics can do small runs as little as 10 items or hundreds to meet your needs. We'll help you be seen no matter how large or small you are. Visit acehighgraphics.com today.
Right.
And the plants are healing Mother Earth's skin, as it were. So what are the wounds, and how do we in our lives look at that? If dandelion's the root that's really helping me, and I've been having some signs of liver congestion, and I've started having some rashes or whatever on my skin, and dandelion seems to really be helping, and the heat rash has gone down, and I'm actually sleeping better and not having so much of that weird overheating problem that I was. That's great. Dandelion's helping. What is it removing on a spiritual level? Because I can also look at that and take a little bit more conscious action to help that healing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's perfect timing to clean up the mess that I've got around me, or to remove a blockage in my work life, change careers, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's people. All of us are looking for those answers because life is so complicated. And as much as we love the internet, it hasn't made life easier. It has not reduced work volume as promised. It doesn't actually necessarily improve connection between people. It sort of can, but you have to be very clear and specific and deliberate in how you approach it if you want it to.
Yeah, for sure. You and I have had the luxury of watching all of this develop over our entire lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen the difference in decades, and we've seen the difference in people before and after the internet. And I think if you want to say there's an AD and a BC and an AD for the internet, the year 2000. Right? That's the year where you say that's the year that everything changed.
BM and PM.
Yeah.
Or AM.
Because in the 90s it was, a different energy on the internet completely.
Yeah.
Than it started in 2000 with Web 2.0, which was the big thing, which is completely different than it is now.
Yeah.
There was no social media in 2000, but there is now, and it's prolific.
That is
not
true.
in a good way. But anyway, we're digressing to a completely different thing, and you and I could have a very long conversation about. Yes, I think you're right on all accounts about that. What energy, in this case, like dandelion, what energy is it really helping to deal with based on its myth and magical properties? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why I loved reading the Ashkenazi Herbalism book, because it reminded me of that heritage that, I'm not saying I come from Ashkenazi people, but it's a heritage that all of us share, no matter what our skin color or culture or place of origin or ancestors, where we all share that same place where there was a time when the plants were respected and loved and used to help humanity on all those levels at the same time. And that was one of the things that the Ashkenazi peoples did really, really well,
Mhm.
is they used them, here's the yarrow, put that on there. And then here's a phrase or a saying or an amulet to help you not have this happen again, to help you be in the right place at the right time instead of the wrong place,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, with all of that in mind, Patrick,
Yeah.
what are we going to do for solstice to celebrate?
Well, I'm not sure that this year is different again, and our diets are different again this year. I mean, last year we were full on vegetarian. We were on that, and then this year that has changed somewhat. We had we read a book or listened to a book anyway. I did, and that kind of changed my mindset on a few things. And this year we may bring back some of the traditions in our family, which was to celebrate the solstice and the Yule time frame, or and have a bigger dinner with possibly friends this year, maybe not. Probably might have the traditional roast beef that we used to have, but maybe choose better meat than we've done before, or whatever. I'm not sure. It's a hard one to say. I mean, lamb biryani is really good. Vegetable biryani is really good. I mean, we could do that too.
Yeah.
There's just lots of different things. I mean, we normally have a fire at sunset, and we kind of nurse it for the evening, and have light in the dark. We talk about it as the rebirth of light coming back, and that's why we have the fire, and we tend it for most of the evening. If we had people over, it becomes a festival party between eating and being on the patio with the fire, and coming in and going out, and there's drinking and imbibing and enjoying, and people really like it because it's not Christmas in the way that a Christmas party is. It's quite different. And I think it's a respite from the holiday season, even though it's right in the middle of the holiday season, because we're not exchanging gifts, we're not doing all these things that you would do at a quote unquote holiday party.
Yeah, I think one of the things that 2021 has asked of me, at least, I don't know if other people have gotten this, but for me, it's been a question of what is it that you truly value? What is actually important for you? Really, not the details of it, but what are the core values, the core things that are really, really important for you? And how do you edit out the stuff that's less important in your life? How do you keep coming back to the things that really, really matter? And for me, one of the things that has always mattered is that connection between human experience and the spirit of all the rest of everything. Because it's almost like we as humans for quite a few centuries now have been trying to keep ourselves as separate. And we've built this separate culture as if we are somehow not a part of nature, which is, in my mind, kind of ridiculous. We are a part of nature. We are as natural as the dandelion or the Douglas fir tree. But we also have been creating this world that is artificial in that we're creating it, but it isn't in tune with Mother Nature. So where are the places that we can more easily edit out some of the artificial in favor of the natural, but without having to go live in a yurt in the middle of the woods, with no plumbing or internet or electricity? Because, that might be great for some people, but I like my plumbing. I really do like the internet and the electricity. I'm going to keep all of those. But how do I do it without having my life be so crazy and complicated and exhausting as it was before this whole pandemic started? And that's some of the things that I've been entertaining throughout the year. So as we're getting ready for our solstice celebration, that's part of what I've been thinking about is what are the rituals, what are the experiences that help support the things I truly value? My community, my people, my humans, but also not just the human peoples, but the plant peoples and the animal peoples and the land peoples that I also strongly value. I value them as much as I value the humans in my life. So how do I connect with all of that and keep those places alive and cared for? And then,
You're one of those people that ride or walk a line or a path. On one side of you is the physical world, and the other side of you is the mystical world, and you can seem to skip another side of that path anytime you want.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to you.
Yeah. To me, this is just normal.
Right. But yeah, it's normal to you, but it isn't normal to me. And it isn't normal to many people. I think you might be more balanced in your approach because you can do that. Some people that we know are much more on the right-hand side, which is, it's called the spiritual side, and over here, and they don't cross over into the, the nuts and bolts physical day-to-day thing. And then there's other part where they're, so into that, maybe it's the grounded, ungrounded idea.
Right. Yeah.
If you were talking about being a polarized ion, positive or negative, you're actually neutral. You'd be a neutron. You'd be something that's, you're there. You can play with either side, but you're not team electron and team proton.
Right. That's true. That's true.
You're kind of you're refereeing, maybe you're in the middle, the Switzerland of spiritual, physical connection, but most people either, land themselves one way or the other, not down the middle.
Yeah.
That's a place where you bridge and you bring that to everything that you do. So, whatever it is, it's just part of when you were talking about 2021 for you.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. But I have noticed that other people around me who are not necessarily looking at the world the way that I do, people that are more grounded or people who are more esoteric or ungrounded or whatever.
Right.
I've been noticing a lot of people are sometimes having experiences where they're being forced into editing out or getting rid of or whatever, getting rid of stuff that isn't really working.
Right.
And, especially this fall, I noticed quite a few people having to get rid of stuff that wasn't working. It was right in front of them and they knew it wasn't working, but they were busy ignoring it because for whatever reason, it was easier. And I think we're at the close of that now, that we've done a lot of our work, and now is the time to take a deep breath and prepare for the new world, as it were.
It's a pretty big talk there.
But I'm not saying the end of the world is here and, the sky is falling or anything. I'm just saying that many of us have evolved considerably over the past calendar year. And
yeah, we have. I mean, we definitely have.
And we've been through a lot of dark, especially over the second half of this last year, as Delta variant has squashed a lot of people's hopes of more travel and that sort of thing.
Well,
and then
the pandemic being quote unquote over.
Yeah, exactly. And we're stepping into the light again. That's what the solstice is reminding us, is that we are. I mean, it won't be a lot more minutes of light initially, but we are stepping into the light again. And I think that's part of what our solstice celebration is about. And in that, we share that with all of nature. So. Yeah.
All right.
Deep thoughts again with Candace.
Well, happy solstice. Happy holidays. And I think we're off for a couple weeks now.
Yeah, we're going to take some time to recharge, as all of us shall do, I hope.
Right.
And so we wish you guys a merry holiday season, a happy solstice, and a beautiful new year. We'll be back in early January.
All right. And what with that then?
Put an herb on it.
The statements made about herbs and products on this podcast have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided on this podcast or any affiliated websites is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for advice from your physician or other healthcare professional. You should not use the information on this podcast and its affiliated websites for a diagnosis or treatment of any health problem. Always consult with a healthcare professional before starting any new vitamins, supplements, diet, or exercise program before taking any medication, or if you have or suspect you might have a health problem. Any testimonials, questions, or case studies are based on individual results and do not constitute a guarantee that you will achieve the same results.